We've seen that before Aristotle, there was a long discussion about the relation of nature, physis, to human law or convention, nomos. Herodotus was attentive to the relativity of custom, which he illustrates by quoting Pindar, "Custom is the king of all." The sophists Callicles in Plato's Gorgias and Thrasymachus in the Republic argue that human laws are simply artificial means for repressing the strong and powerful. In the Melian dialogue in Thucydides, the Athenian delegation appealed to this way of thinking when they dismissed all ideas of ethics and justice as nonsense. For them, what was right was simply the natural order of things whereby the strong conquer the weak, and that was all there was to it. What's common to all of these views is that in the end, human laws and regulations are contrary to nature and are usually oppressive. Aristotle represents an important refutation of this view that tries to justify the abuses of bullies by an appeal to nature. As we've noted, he was himself a natural scientist who had spent many hours observing the workings of nature. He argues that the state and its laws and regulations are not artificial constructions that are contrary to nature. Instead, they're a natural part of human development. Indeed, they are what makes it possible for us to grow and become fully human. We would not be who we are if it were not for the rules, regulations, and laws which make social life possible in the first place. It's precisely these things that create a social world that we can live in and thus gives us a forum in which we can develop ourselves as individuals. This can be illustrated most obviously when we think of the education of young children. As adults, we all know that for them to be able to develop to their full potential, they need to be given clear rules and regulations. They can't be allowed to act on every natural impulse and desire that comes along, as they would otherwise be inclined to do if left to their own devices. If we were to eliminate all forms of rules and regulations from education, it would be impossible for children to develop at all. Their growth would be stunted, and they would never be able to become fully mature human beings. We are used to hearing the complaints of children who would like to do something but are prevented from doing so by some arbitrary rule that sounds absurd to them. As adults, however, we know that such rules are anything but arbitrary. We can see the necessity of them for the development of the child. Indeed, later the children themselves come to thank us for this kind of guidance when they reach an age when they can understand its importance. Aristotle's point is a similar one. In society, we can often get frustrated by the number of rules and regulations to which we're subject at many different levels. But Aristotle's argument is that it would be a mistake to conclude from this that we should just throw out the rules, since by doing so, we would in effect be throwing out social life and civilization altogether. Laws are not artificial constructs, but instead natural growths in the development of human society. They help to create the conditions that allow us to be who we are as human beings and to develop to our full human potential. This is, of course, not to say that every law or rule is a good one, and there can certainly be plenty of debate about this in the individual case. But the overarching point that Aristotle is making is that the conception of a radical split between nature, physis, and human law, nomos, is a serious misunderstanding of what it is to be human. To be human and to live in a society means to be subject to rules and laws. But we don't need to perceive these as oppressive to our natural side. Instead, they're an expression of our own rational will. They were created by other people long before us to realize the importance of having such rules. We share in the rationality of these earlier people and can understand the point with the laws and regulations that they created. It's no accident that ancient civilizations took great pride in the creation and codification of their first laws. We quickly think of the Babylonian Code of Hammurabi, the Ten Commandments delivered by Moses, the Athenian laws of Solon, or the Indian laws of Manu. It's not by chance that the ancients regarded laws as so important that they had to be divinely given. Laws were divine wisdom passed on by the gods to human beings. In times when there were no law courts, police forces, or any real meaningful forms of administration of justice, the ancient peoples were acutely aware that rules, regulations, and laws were an essential part of any form of social life. They realized that the very precondition for them to develop as peoples into great civilizations was the establishment of such a body of laws. When we reflect on human culture, and the great products of civilization, we tend to think of things such as famous paintings, sculptures, musical pieces. We forget, however, that the creation of law and regulation is one of the greatest human achievements of all. Law, too, is very much an expression of our humanity as a work of art. In some ways, it can be argued this aspect of human culture was the condition for all the rest that followed.